This Aibo belongs to a friend of mine over on the Robot Chat Discord server. He was sent to me for repairs due to a really strange issue where all of the face LEDs illuminate during the boot process, and towards the end of booting he eventually just hangs and becomes unresponsive. The dog never actually finishes booting or enters autonomous mode. And I'm suspecting this is probably going to end up being a core issue, but we'll do some testing to confirm that. So I've swapped over one of my spare working cores. We're going to go ahead and see if they can boot up properly now. That seems to have gotten rid of the LED issue at least. We'll see if they can actually finish the boot process now. I already tried cleaning the contacts on their limbs and swapping over a different stick that's for sure working, so it definitely is looking like a core problem at this point. Alright, so they can boot now. And they seem to be running just fine with the replacement core, so it's definitely something internally wrong with their old one. We'll look into that a bit further soon. So I've gone ahead and made a little test setup here. It's not the prettiest, but until I get around to building a dedicated 1 Series test rig, it's good enough for now. 1 Series dogs are a little bit different than other Aibos in that they don't need their legs or tail connected, but they do need a head connected to boot. So with the dog powered up and in the state where they've froze mid-boot, I went ahead and probed all the outer test points on the core, and these are the values that I got. Now it seems a little bit suspect that TP5, 11, and 13 were reading 0 volts, but without any sort of documentation or schematics from Sony, I really don't know for sure. It's entirely possible those are supposed to be low and 0 is expected during the boot process. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and take the core apart a bit further and see if I can find anything obvious as to why it's not booting. And we're going to make an educated guess and say those probably should not be 0 at this point, but I could be wrong. So I've gone ahead and fully disassembled this core, and unfortunately there's nothing that's immediately obvious or visible as to why it has failed. So the next step, I'm going to go ahead and clean the connectors that interconnect all of the boards within the core. There's a few on each board, 1 on the memory stick reader, 2 on there. Alright, I've got the core reassembled now and everything hooked up to it that I need for testing. Let's go ahead and see if it works. That's off to a really good start. The LEDs are off. Again, with no documentation from Sony, this is just a guess, but I'm assuming those were some sort of error code before when they were illuminating during boot. Let's see if he can make it through the boot process all the way. And he's booted. This core seems to be good now. I'm going to go ahead and reassemble the core the rest of the way so we can put some limbs on it and do a bit more testing, but initially, at first glance, this seems to be fixed. And I should also mention that the core is saving properly now. Before, it would not do the proper shutdown, and it would just kind of flash indefinitely until I manually reset it, and then it would turn off. But now we're actually getting the saving beeps, and it actually finishes saving correctly. I also removed the CMOS battery that was in the core, since it was only reading about 1/3 of its rated capacity, and batteries like this tend to start corroding and making a mess of things when they're at the end of their life. I'm going to go ahead and order a new VL2330 to put in there, but for now I'm just going to reassemble the core without it so I can do further testing. I've got their core most of the way back together. There's still a bit on the back and the rear of the dog I need to put on, but we're just going to do a quick test to see if they'll boot with all their limbs attached. And there we go, that's a working core. I'll let them run a couple minutes, but once they're done with that, I can go ahead and finish reassembly and swap their original stick back in. Just as a final note to end out the video, I forgot to film it, but I did go back and retest some of the test points that had read 0 volts before, and after thoroughly cleaning all of the pins and contacts on the core that interconnect the boards, I was getting proper voltage at some of those now. So my suspicions earlier about them not supposed to be low was correct.